land on the surface of our earth is whether we're producing fossil fuel, pollution of the ground, whether it's sewage, whether it's industry, all of that percolates down into our water table. And if we tap into that water table, you will find that there is a reflection of the human footprint on the surface of the earth. Many parts of Lagos now, if you tap into the water table, that water is not useful, neither for domestic use in terms of animal propagation or for human use. And we've had several scenarios about this. You will all remember the situation around one of our famous girls' boarding school in Lagos, where water was drawn up from the water table and it was heavily polluted with bacteria that had very, very disturbing antimicrobial resistance patterns that caused severe sickness and suffering amongst our school children. So in a nutshell, this is the One Health paradigm. It surmises to tell us that human health is totally dependent on the environment in which we live. There are several factors that are affecting the health of human beings: the water we drink, the loss of biodiversity, the depletion of the natural air in which we live, desertification and land degradation, and of course, the ubiquitous climate change that we're all subject to globally. All of these have an impact on us as human beings and our health. And this is really the sum total of the One Health paradigm. And it is our responsibility to address each and every one of these factors. So what is this administration doing? Well, the Lagos State has the One Health strategy. It's comprised of several key ministries: the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Environment and its agencies, LASEPA and LASPARC, Ministry of Urban Planning, the Ministry of Justice, to ensure that we have legislation that regulates the activities and the human footprint on the environment in which we live. And of course, the Ministry of Agriculture, to ensure that the food chain that we consume as Lagosians and as Nigerians has integrity in terms of its production, its preservation, and its storage. To sum this all up, we are developing what we call the Biosecurity Integrity Policy, which is in a draft form at the moment, but it will eventually, we are already practicing elements of this integrity policy, and eventually it will become an act. And we have commissioned the Biosecurity Governance Council for almost about 9 months now. And their main responsibility across the board is to try and ensure that as government, we follow the principles of restoration of the environment and avoidance of toxicity and despoilation of our ecosystems and the biosphere in which we are so dependent upon. So in a nutshell, Lagos State has a green agenda. We are hoping that we can roll this out as aggressively as we can, and we're so thankful that the civil society are part of this and aggressively championing the paradigm of environmental integrity and protection, and most importantly, restoration where we have caused damage. On that note, thank you once again for being able to participate in this webinar, and to congratulate you on the amount of awareness that you're generating in the state and partnering with state to ensure that we have something that we can hand to the next generation, which demonstrates our cognizance and our higher consciousness of the importance of ecosystem integrity. Thank you very much. Have a pleasant rest of the proceedings.
Thank you very much, Professor Abayomi, on that truly inspiring presentation and insight to what Lagos State is doing. And I think what is really, really important is to see that it's actually an interagency. One Health is connected all the different aspects of, from planning to the environment to health, and all these factors that go into ensuring that we have a more sustainable environment. So thank you very much for that. We move swiftly to the panel discussion, and we have an incredible panel for you here. Some very, very people that I'm huge fans of myself, so I'm very happy to be moderating this panel. First on the panel is one of our mothers of Nigeria, as I would like to call her, Her Excellency Mrs. Ajoke Mohammed. She's the champion of the Greenbelt Movement of Nigeria and is currently involved in some very, very important sustainability activities, from the Murtala Mohammed Memorial Park and Botanical Gardens in Lagos to the Botanical Gardens in Abuja. Thank you very much, ma'am, for joining us on this panel. Next on the panel is Dr. Dolapo Fasewa, who is the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer of Lagos State Environmental Protection Agency, who's pivotal in implementing policy and improving the environment in Lagos. Thank you very much for joining us. It's great to have you here. And of course, somebody that is very well known within the environmental, heritage, and sustainability community, which is Mr. Desmond Majekodunmi, who is, I would say, not just a chief carer for the heritage and community and sustainability, but also the carer of the Lekki Urban Forest and Animal Sanctuary Initiative, and also Lufasi Nature Park, which has a motto, which is loving nature. He currently involved in several NGOs, including the Nigerian Conservation Foundation, where he serves as the governing council. Thank you very much for joining us. Next on the panel is Mrs. Bilikis Adebiyi-Abiola, who is the founder of Recycle Nigeria Limited, a non-profit social enterprise that promotes environmental sustainability, social welfare, and community health by utilizing low-cost carbon bicycles called Recycles to provide convenient recycling services to households in densely populated, low-income neighborhoods. Thank you so much for joining us. It's really great to have you here. And last but not least, on the panel is Mr. Tosin Odunfa, who is an environmentalist, a media communication expert, and Tosin is someone who's passionate about underscoring the role of ordinary citizens in engaging in government to increase their capacity to solve specific problems that impact their communities. So we have such a great array of panelists here, and I would like to start with Her Excellency, because I think what is important is that we have some sort of context. So my first question, my plan is to just ask each of the panelists a question, and they can share with us their thoughts and their experience. Good morning, ma'am, Her Excellency. You've seen Nigeria pre-independence, post-independence, and some of the slides that Prof shared with us earlier, you've, unlike some of us, have experienced at first hand. And you've seen how the environment has changed. And your initiatives such as the SARIES, Botanical Gardens in Abuja, Botanical Gardens in Lagos, have tried to create a space for conservation and the environment. And I think it'd be important for you to share your journey and why you think creating these spaces are important and part of our heritage as Nigerians.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
Good morning.
This is Mrs. Dolapo Fasewa, organizers of the Dawn Project and fellow panelists. It's a great honor for me to be called upon to talk about conservation, which is a subject that I'm very passionate about. But the conservation, as some of the former speakers have mentioned, conservation is all about conserving everything that is in our world. But the conservation that I want to talk about is the conservation of our plants, the flora and fauna of Nigeria. And what I want to talk about this morning is, yes, it is possible to reclaim Nigeria, but there must be a lot of commitment and seriousness. We have to be serious and very committed to what we are doing. The NGOs who are involved in conservation should target the schools. The schools, it is important and imperative to catch them young. In Nigeria, we have all the climates that will grow anything that grows in Europe. So people don't even know that we have protea in Obodo Cattle Ranch. On the hills, there are proteas. People think that proteas only grow in South Africa. We have them there, but nothing is being done about them. The Mambina Plateau and Jos grows a lot of things that grow in cold climates. If there's a strong network of conservation, all these things can be achieved.
Thank you.
Other countries like Japan started, conserving their trees and getting trees from other countries 30 years ago. I was a part of the Expo 90 when Japan invited all the countries of the world to come and bring trees from their countries and plant gardens. It's now a city, a big tree garden city, and they get millions of tourists every year. Why can we not do the same? We have the conditions, we have everything that we need to make it work.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, man. My Excellency, as she's mentioned, the idea of the individual agency, how it's important for networking within conservation groups. She's mentioned, I think, what I feel is the most critical thing, which is reorientating the importance of the value of the environment. And I think what would be good is for you to speak about, if we don't act now, if we don't plant more trees, if we don't find systems to combat this degradation of the environment, or if we don't revalue or reassess how important the environment and nature is within our own country, what does that mean for us and the climate issues that are happening locally and globally?
What does that mean for us? Well, I have to thank Her Excellency Mrs. Ajoke Mohammed, and also Her Excellency Mrs. Osibajo for that wonderful song, and also the inspiration from our wonderful Commissioner for Health, who you have promoted to Minister of Health. Well, that's won't go into politics. And also, of course, the convener and everybody else. What does that mean? Well, let's just quote the Secretary General of the United Nations, who very recently made this statement, and it struck me to my core. He said that the point of no return is no longer in the horizon. The point of no return is hurtling towards us. And I mentioned this at a lecture that I gave for the local UN forum. And I pointed to Howard Guterres' picture at this forum. And I said, is this man a fool? And of course, the head of UN mission, he got up and he was almost offended. And he said, no, that's my boss. My boss is certainly not a fool. And I said, well, I agree with you entirely. In fact, your boss is an extremely intelligent man that has access to many, many resources like all his predecessors. And for him to have made that statement, it would have been grounded on pure science. That the point of no return is hurtling towards us. What's he talking about? He's talking about an irreversible breakdown of the various life-giving resources that God Almighty has bestowed us with break down. And this is exactly what's happening with climate change, with the species extinction that's going on, with the massive pollution. We as human beings better get this right, because here we are hurtling towards a catastrophic conclusion with what? The life of our children in our hands. And we need to recognize this. And in fact, the reality is that we have known this for quite some time. We know the implications of these things, but we have continued down this road, and it is taking us in a very bad direction. We've already had the COVID, and that has showed us what nature can do when she fights back. And she's beginning to fight back now. And I think we need to really go into a change of mindset. We need to have a transformation, a renewal of our minds into the true likeness of the Creator, which is a Creator that made this wonderful creation with love and admonished us in all scriptures. In all scriptures, all the major scriptures is there. There's no ambiguity. It is there in all the major scriptures, from the Holy Bible to the Holy Quran to the Buddhist Shastras to the Jewish Torah. You name it, it's there. That we are caretakers of the creation, and I am hopeful, especially in Nigeria. I'm hopeful because we are a God-knowing, God-fearing, God-loving nation, and we also love our children. I mean, come on, we love our children. And we should not be hypocritical in the expression of love to our God, who says that we should care for his creation. And once we get into our consciousness what we are doing, which is what this wonderful forum is all about, I believe that we shall have the necessary mind change. And that'll immediately drive us to this huge tree planting program that is so necessary. We need actually hundreds and hundreds of millions of trees now in our country to bring it back to that minimum of 25% tree coverage. We also need to do exactly the right thing when it comes to the pollution. And I think we're very, very much on the right track. If we love our God and we love our children, we'll make sure that Nigeria goes back to her green status.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, sir, for that. And I think this idea of mind reorientation, this idea of networks, this idea of people coming together and planting trees, critical to that is how information is shared, how information is disseminated. And I'd like to bring Tosin Odunfa here, who is an environmentalist. He's somebody that works at very high levels in media and understands how to share information and how information is passed out, especially when we're in an information age, when we have to find out new ways to share information, not just with the people that have smartphones, but to the everyday man. So Tosin, I think I would like you to maybe come in at this point and maybe kind of share with us like how we can use the media, how the media can support some of these initiatives, and how the media can help sensitize the masses and reintroduce the value of the environment into our godly lives, as Mr. Majekodunmi just shared with us.
Thank you very much. And because your question in itself can be the topic of an entire event, I'm going to be quite theoretical in my approach. And I also must say that media is about connections and about influence. And with that said, I have to say that I am super pleased to know that we have a powerful ally in the person of Her Excellency Mrs. Osinbajo, the wife of our Vice President. And also as a beneficiary of the British Council Innovation 360 Award that sent me on a full scholarship to postgraduate school in the UK in recognition of a paper I wrote called Forest Cities, They focus on policy that promotes low-tech interventions of sustainable architecture and reforestation in urban planning and revitalization. I am keenly aware that we have eco-allies abroad. And so I have to specially recognize His Excellency Ben Llewellyn-Jones, the Deputy High Commissioner of the United Kingdom in Nigeria. And of course, I further recognize the Honorable Commissioner of Health, Professor Akin Abayomi, the Honorable Commissioner for Environment, Mr. Tunji Bello, the GM LASEPA, Dr. Dolapo Fasewa, the convener, Dr. Pam, Uncle Desmond, Her Excellency, Mrs. Murtala Mohammed, my friend and former Last Park GM, Mrs. Bilikis, and of course you, Architect Papa Omotayo. All other protocols duly observed. Now allow me to start off with a soundbite from some memorable cartoons from my childhood. Captain Planet, he's a hero, gonna take pollution down to zero. And then, one man's trash is another man's superhero. He is Plastic Man, the Elastic Man. Now, by the way, for the younger audience members who do not recognize these cartoon titles, it's telling on my relative age. And by the way, it's my birthday today. So you can wish me a happy birthday in the chat sections or on my Instagram. Now, I dive in. Mr. Majekodunmi has spent time and resources creating awareness in various ways over the years, culminating in Lufasi Park, a premier institution dedicated to fostering interactions with nature, environment education, forest conservation, and wildlife rehabilitation. We also have, of course, the Ministry of Environment that has long been established in Lagos State as a full-fledged commission of the state government. And although recently they haven't shown much capacity nor resolve, they are still potentially a solid asset and an ally with a clear mandate. And of course, also earmarked resources that are meant to defend the environment in Lagos. Let's also look at Bilikis, who is a star that has been recognized internationally because she dedicated her full time, as well as world-class education, blood, sweat, and tears to an enterprise dedicated to reducing Nigeria's plastic waste footprint. You may wonder where I'm going with this and how it connects to the media. All these are investments in the protection of our environment, the conservation of our prized green assets, and investments, of course, in reversing the clock on climate change, which ultimately means an investment in the survival of humanity as we know it. But how do we recoup these investments? The answer might require some more investment. Now, all the endeavors of our various eco-heroes, past and present, when done in silos or at small scale, often do not appear to deliver encouraging returns until they are, of course, scaled up deliberately or organically reach a critical mass. Now, based on the clear urgency that Mr. Majekodunmi has underscored, the need to change the trajectory of humanity's and, of course, Nigeria's in particular, unsustainable development practices, we cannot wait for organic reach of pooling eco-friendly warriors and eco-aware leaders and citizens. Now, here is where the media plays a critical role, alongside financiers, of course, and the government. These three, ladies and gentlemen, media, government, and financiers, private and institutional, are the most influential tools that we have to help us scale up our efforts that have been done by various impressive actors. Now, this brings me back to Captain Planet and Plastic Man, the Elastic Man. While being entertained, a few cartoons ensured that a young, impressionable Tosin received some important foundational education. And of course, Her Excellency, Mrs. Ajoke Murtala Mohammed, mentioned the fact that we have to try to catch them young. So media isn't just about, connecting us. It's about catching them young. But anywho, the creation of these media art forms that were targeted at children was deliberate, precise, and far-reaching. And in closing, I will say that I have to underscore the importance of realizing that the media in reality is an available tool for any individual who can conceive the extent of its power and who can resolve to harness it in the undertaking that lies ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Tosin. And you are showing your age. So I'm going to move us from the 80s to 2020, and we're going to move from Plastic Man to Plastic Woman. And there's no other champion than my next question, which is to Bilikis. And thank you so much. You did a fantastic thing under the last agency. And we cyclists, like Tosin has mentioned, has grown both locally and internationally in reputation. And when I think about the first three speakers, what you've managed to do is encompass the urgency of creating a space. Like Her Excellency, understands that it's important to create a space. You've also been able to harness the issues that are affecting climate change and global warming and waste and pollution, which is, as we know, plastic is one of the most major issues we have now with the climate. But at the same time, you've been able to find a way to communicate all of these things in a way that as many people see the value of paying attention to the environment. So I think I'd like to really hear about your journey and how we cyclists have been able to cultivate this space and what the learnings are from your recent experiences.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. Please permit me to stand on existing protocol. I am very, very honored to be here. Thank you to the organizers. Thank you to Papa. Thank you to happy birthday, Tosin. And thank you also to Dr. Dolapo, my colleague. I want to say that I think poverty and the environment go hand in hand. It's, when we were working on recyclers, we had to kind of look at Nigeria and the rest of the developing world. In Nigeria, 70% of Nigerians are poor. So they live on less than $2 a day. That's like 700 naira. They don't have access to running water, waste management, and so many other things. And that's really the drive. I think that's really the driver and the lens that we should use to see how we can really solve this big problem. I was reading a report yesterday that said that plastic production has skyrocketed from 2.3 million tons in 1950 to 448 million tons in 2015.
Wow.
50% of all plastics ever made have been produced since 2005, just 15 years. So you can imagine enormity. Plastic production is growing at an exponential rate. I shudder to think about what we're going to do in the next 10 years. At the same time, we have, like Professor Abayomi said, we have a growing population, and a lot of the population are poor. And if we juxtapose this, pollution, like Professor Abayomi said, it's a driver for poverty. And we know that if we want to make anything work, we need to be able to to really reach a vast majority of the population. And so what we decided to do at WeCyclers was, I'm going to tell you some other statistics. We all know that by 2050, there's going to be more plastic than fish in the ocean. So all the fish that we're eating is going to have plastic in it. So we're all eating plastic. So at WeCyclers, we said, we're going to actually turn this problem into an opportunity. How can we create a business model that solves the problem of waste pollution while empowering people? So what we did was we went into community and we encouraged people to give us their recyclable waste. So their plastics, their metals, paper, in exchange for points, which they get per kilogram. And we also make them save. So basically, for every time we come and collect from them, they get an SMS, which adds to their account. And then every time they recycle, they keep on accumulating points. And then every 3 months, they can exchange the points for money. So basically what is happening is that in many of these communities, people are being engaged in cleaning up. And instead of the waste being the cause for flooding, being the cause for pollution, being the cause for asthma, being the cause for malaria, they are actually taking this waste and empowering themselves while diverting it into the recycling value chain. And what we did was we just used this. So we basically motivated people because when you talk to people that are living, at the base of the pyramid, they care about the environment, but they want to survive. That's the number one thing. Like, I want to survive, I want to feed my family. So how can you start this conversation? And so what we did was we tried to align incentives. And people, after a while, when people continue to recycle this, they started saying that, you know what, even if you don't give me anything, I'm actually happy that I'm doing something for my environment, because I can see that my children are not getting sick, my gutter is flowing, those kind of things. So I think for us to really be able to make a dent, we have to really go to the grassroots. We have to, engage people in the grassroots. We have to engage them, and because that's really what is going to make it really resonate. It shouldn't be a discussion that is only for it should be something that is done and spoken, by everyone. And so I'm going to stop there, and thank you so much.
Yeah, and thank you so much. And it's a good place to stop, because when we talk about grassroots, this takes us to government, and we have Ministry of NASEPA here with us. Dr. Dolapo, are you there? I think she's on mute. It would have been great. Oh, hi, great. So we were just talking about the importance of creating a better environment for the masses and bringing them all in together. And I think everybody has talked about pollution, we've talked about the environment, and Bilikis has brought it down, I think, to how it affects the everyday man. So I think it'd be great to hear from the agency how they are working, taking all of these issues that have been raised together to create a better environment for the everyday Nigerian. Would you like to share something with us on that?
Thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here, and I feel highly honored. Two wise men, Her Excellency Grandma Mrs. Ajoker Mohammed, and Her Excellency the wife of the Vice President, who shares the same name with me. And in those days, she had a magazine, Goshen. I was a guest writer, and she would call me Sister Dolly. And I'll say, no, you're Sister Dolly. I am Dr. Fasewa, great woman. And my commissioner for health, who mentioned something very critical, and that's where I'm starting from. You have to think health and environment. You can't separate the two. So here I am, medical doctor, being head of Environmental Protection Agency. And we must give it to this government, Mr. Babajide Sanwo-Olu. That wasn't a fluke. It's just health and environment cannot be separated. Now, you're only as healthy as your environment. That is what the doctor said. The environment I want to put to you belongs to all of us, not just government, not just me, and not just Bilikis. Hello, Bilikis. And what can we do? We keep having these conversations over and over and over. I'm showing you a slide of Lekki Conservation Area. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I was giving a talk yesterday, and it was on flooding. Lekki Conservation Area is built, man-made, to trap flood and conserve greenery. There's opportunities for tourism, partnership. Imagine if Lekki Conservation Area was somewhere in Miami. We would be paying hundreds of dollars and wait on queues to go there. But will government do it? This government that did this were the white colonial masters. Now it is our turn, and we're having these conversations. If government cannot do it, someone come and say, I will take all your flood. Give me this land. And that's what I want my conversation to be about. We keep talking about how is government caring? Yes, we care, but how are we showing we care? First of all, I must say, and I take responsibility for what I'm about to say, as NASEPA GM, awareness is zero. Even I, as a widely traveled human being, medical doctor, top of in my brain, top of myself, I wasn't sorting my waste before I got to Lufasi Park. It didn't seem like a big issue. We would do it in London, but it didn't seem like a big issue. And why is it not a big issue? Because if you don't do it, nobody will catch you. So, listen, we're developing all these things on the slide at supporting cleanup initiatives. And
can you move to the next page, because we're seeing the first
okay.
Move your slide.
Answer your question
We're
now.
not following your slide.
Sorry? Okay, I'll talk.
You just need to slide to the next page.
The last one. What I'm about to say is that it's a collective responsibility. People out there need to bring ideas and suggestions to the government and say, I am willing to put my money and my strength behind this. Just make a policy for recycling, and I'll put recycling points everywhere in Alausa instead of people dumping their bottles into the drains. Bring the points. Now, government has limited, we have a lot of money, a lot of resources, but everybody is competing for that. In this day and age, in their before now dispensation, they didn't know all these things. I didn't even know most of these things. Now, those of us that know should stop talking. And as Uncle Desmond said, a disaster is about to happen. And as my cartoon is showing, global warming may cause serious flooding. Then you, governor, private sector, uncle will say, I beg, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. Look at the bridge. You can't even get on it, and you can jump over. That's my submission. We gotta work together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Perhaps you can just stop sharing screen, and if we can just take maybe 5 minutes, I think we have some time to just answer some good questions in the Q&A. Presley asked a really important question, and I'd like to put that to Her Excellency Mrs. Murtala Mohammed and Tosin, which is how do we integrate education that speaks to the environment and climate change within the school system? Excellency, would you like to maybe make a recommendation or some thoughts on that?
Thank you very much. I think because if you are waiting for the Ministry of Education to change the curriculum and integrate it into the school curriculum, I think we'll be wasting a lot of time. As I have mentioned before, the environmental groups, we must get up and act. Not only talk. We are here now talking. There have been so many talks everywhere. A lot of talking. No, with little action. And even if you appeal to the government to do this, they will tell you, oh yes, we are going to do it. They'll take all your papers, but that's the last you'll hear of it. The environmental group to form a very strong network and see how the schools can integrate, this education into the school system, into the school curriculum.
Thank you very much, man. Tosin, do you want to add maybe something onto that?
Really quickly, I'll piggyback on Her Excellency, Mrs. Murtala Mohammed, and say a lot of times we wait for government to do things, and we also need to realize that if we don't take into cognizance that there is an alternative education that is gaining even more steam than perhaps what traditional education is doing for us in Nigeria, then we will lose out a lot. And what I mean is this: as children develop, especially in this day and age, one of the first things that they interact with is some sort of piece of technology, an iPad, a phone, and all whatnot. And I do know that this is a bit elitist. But it's also important for us to realize as the elite that we owe the entire country a service. And the reason is because, of course, we have been bestowed with quite a large proportion of the resources in this country. So in order for us to ensure that the few of us who are aware of environmental responsibility continue to pass this on, we have to make sure that that charity begins at home. We have to begin to create the media. We have to begin to create the media that targets those children. And I'm going to say this pretty much in closing. I have a nephew and a niece, in fact, 2 nephews and a niece, who interact a lot with entertainment on phones and iPads and so on and so forth. And a lot of this entertainment is created abroad. And of course, they're going to be seeing icebergs. Nigerians don't know anything about icebergs. They're not going to connect with climate change that way. Long and short of the story, we have to start creating media content for our children and take the responsibility of educating our children from people abroad and bring it home. And it's important for us as eco-responsible people to realize that we must pass this torch on as effectively as possible. And media is an important piece to that puzzle.
Thank you so much, Tosin. There's another great question, which is a little bit controversial. So I'm going to address it to Mr. Majekodunmi and Prof. Abayomi, which it talks about population. And I think it was shown in one of Prof's slides to see what's happening with population, migration, and how that has a massive impact on infrastructure and the environment, on education, healthcare. And I think it's something that we often don't talk about. So it'd be interesting to hear both your points on if our population is growing exponentially, it's surely going to continue to add to these problems. Mr. Majekodunmi, maybe you could start off?
Well, one comedian, he blamed the population explosion on the fact that Nigerian women are so beautiful. But I think that's very chauvinistic. I wouldn't want to go down that road. No, again, things have changed. You know, the COVID button has been pressed, and COVID is a reset in many, many, many ways. And we can't continue the way we used to. We're overtaxing the resources of this planet. And as Prof, put it in a very, very clear way, if you look at it almost from financial terms, we're going too far, too quickly into deficit. It's a limited planet. She's a small Earth. It doesn't take very long to go around planet Earth. She has limitations. So we need to just wise up a little bit and really start thinking of, controlling our populations. And if you're desperate for children, there's loads of kids in orphanages. I won't tell you how many I've adopted, but many other people will do that. The reset button has been pressed. We need to rethink.
Well, Professor, do you have any thoughts on this this issue?
Well, yes. So population growth is multifaceted. It's a factor of rate of birth, longevity, and some pull factors such as inward bound migration. So it's not a simple solution to controlling migration. We are a subnational. The laws of the nation allow any Nigerian to move around in any part of the country. But we need to pay attention to simple things like, from the medical perspective, we need to think about family planning, child spacing, so that each child is more likely to enter the human capital through, good nutrition, good education, and then grow up to contribute to the human capital of the state. At the same time, we do need to pay attention to inbound migration, but that's a sub-region, regional, and a national agenda. And so, those are really the elements of, we must remember that Lagos is the smallest state in terms of geopolitical size, but yet it's got the biggest human footprint. And there are many environmentologists who will tell you that there's only a certain carrying capacity of a land, of an ecosystem. And once you exceed that carrying capacity, then you're treading on very dangerous territory. and the consequences of that could be catastrophic.
Thank you very much, Prof. And my last question will be to Dr. Fasewa and Bilikis. Someone has asked a really important question, and since is that, they feel that various arms of government are not talking to each other. And even though we're talking about the environmental sustainability, when you look at things like the permits required for construction in estates, where you have estates where there's no trees, no greenery, or people moving into places and cutting down trees, how do we kind of create this awareness that is, like, for instance, we cyclists becomes part of the way of life here in Lagos, where people see the value in participation in the environment, and the various government bodies are talking to each other to make sure that these policies are considered.
Thank you very much. I'll take it in two steps. The first two, what I want to say takes us back again to collective responsibility. I've been looking at the chat room. Some lady said it was my wedding anniversary and my husband took me to OAU Ife, so on a tour as my present. And she said, wow. Now, I was born there, I grew up there. Our boundaries between houses were trees, not fences. It was shrubs. There were fruits called passion fruit, pitanga, Nigerian apple, even oranges, and we will be dodging. Okay, what then happened? Up till tomorrow in Ife, Road 1 has 20 houses. Nobody built for 40 years that I grew up there. Road 14, for people that went to Ife, they know what I'm talking about. So they kept having more lecturers, but they had to go and look for a house in town. No one will approve Staff Club Bush to be built on, not one single development. Now, we give approval as government, but people come to ask too. People come. That's the bit of building on drainages and all. If we can stick with the master plan, like Uncle Desmond has said, Corona has given us a reset for us to start thinking that things can work like this, so we didn't know. This is the time to go back, demolish what has to be demolished, and start all over again. May not be us that will reap the benefit, our children definitely will. The other thing is you're talking about recycling. Now, I will probably eat biscuits in the UK and hold the paper till I see the next dustbin, and it will be about 100 meters. The dustbins are not even so clean. At times you see dustbin bag on the floor anyhow. But I don't open the dustbin bags or open the bin, I just drop it there. Now in Nigeria, if I drop it on the road, nobody's going to catch me. And it's not likely that I drop it on the road, but I know 70% of people will. Now we say low income, high density areas are the people not managing their waste. They are the ones not recycling. So we cyclists, or those of us that recycle, let us go there. And we can't just be talking. In La Cepa, single-use plastics have been banned. At first, it was difficult. As of last month, the weighing I was weighing every day was reducing. And I said to my colleague that, this study will be skewed though. He said, no, it means compliance is easy. In my own building, because I don't have jurisdiction over everywhere. Now, all of us in our estates, in our homes, in our social groups, let's start something. It goes a long way. Now, for private sector recyclers, go to these places, give them, after all, when you recycle, you make money. Take the baskets there, take the trucks there, advertise for money. People will not dump in, people will go into the gutter to pick up and come and sell to you. That's the truth. But waiting for government to start that initiative, start this initiative, there's health, there's corona, there's environment, there's teachers, there's doctors on strike. We all need to start talking, especially the recyclers. Make yourself accessible, affordable, and interesting. I also want to just say a few words on Her Excellency's talk about taking education back. Now, Mr. Omotayo, if we're going to take education back to the grassroots, health, environment education, we have to do what Dr. Pamela Ajayi has done, come to their level and let them say we want it as extracurricular, we want it as main curricular, or we want it on weekends. Send out questionnaires. Yes, it's government's job, but those of you out there who have these little clusters of clubs, I can't believe how many points Dr. Ajayi got. So those children have become environment aware. Somebody take it to Ikorodu, somebody take it to Surulere, somebody take it to Mushi, not just around here. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bilikis, it'll be good to hear you, and we can close the panel after that.
I'll just say that I think one of the big issues that we have is that we're not adequately and properly pricing the environmental externalities, the negative externalities to the environment when we are dealing with things like waste management and deforestation. Nobody knows or understands that you dumping plastic on the floor is actually going to cost X amount of naira or dollars. And if you were to quantify that, I think that's really one of the big problems, is that we need to be able to quantify this properly so that people can understand. And if there's a need to actually hold people accountable, then there is something that you can use to do that. I know the federal government has just put in place an EPR policy, that's the Extended Producer Responsibility policy, that would ensure that every piece of waste is actually, people that are recycling waste get something back for every kilogram of waste that they recycle. So I believe, and I know that the Ministry of Environment and LOMA have already keyed into this policy, and I expect to see that this is going to basically, people will start to see more and more people be engaged in recycling and all that. And I think also with regard to what you said about permits and the environment, I think we all need to realize that we are all ambassadors of the environment. We are all environmental stewards. So if you see anyone that is doing anything against the environment, you need to sound the alarm.
Thank you so much. That's the end of the discussion. I just want to say huge thank you to everybody. Her Excellency, Mrs. Ajoke Murtala Mohammed, thank you so much, ma'am, for being here with us today and sharing your thoughts. His Excellency, Professor Akin Abayomi, the Commissioner for Health for Lagos State, and then my minister, anyway, thank you very much. Mr. Desmond Majekodunmi, thank you so much, sir, for your input. Dr. Dolapo Fasewa, thank you again for showing that we need to all participate and we all need to assist government in moving forward. I think this is something that we all need to understand. Tosin Odunfa, thank you so much again for your passion, your environmental push.